When Joseph Valachi exposed the inner workings of the Mafia family, everyone thought he was dead. They were right. A hit was sent out the next day. Years later, Salvatore Gravano took down a boss and suffered the same fate. Here's what happened to Mafia members who betrayed their boss. Joseph Valachi. The seeds of Valachi's betrayal were planted in the concrete walls of Atlanta Federal Penitentiary. Both he and Genovese were serving sentences for narcotics trafficking when their relationship took a deadly turn. Genovese, suspecting Valachi of being an informant, gave him the kiss of death, a symbolic gesture indicating a death sentence within the Mafia. This wasn't just paranoia. Tensions had been building after Valachi survived what he believed was an orchestrated attack in the prison showers. The breaking point came on June 22, 1962, when a terrified Valachi made a fatal mistake. Believing an inmate named Joseph Saup was a hitman sent by Genovese, Valachi bludgeoned Saup to death with a metal pipe, only to learn later that Saup was not the intended assassin. This murder resulted in a life sentence and pushed Valachi past the point of no return. Faced with the prospect of death in prison and believing a $100,000 bounty had been placed on his head, Valachi made the unprecedented decision to cooperate with the U.S. Justice Department. His motivations were complex: fear for his life, desire for revenge against Genovese, and perhaps most importantly, a deep disillusionment with the Mafia that he blamed for ruining his life. In October 1963, Valachi testified before the U.S. Senate's Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations in what became known as the Valachi hearings. His televised testimony was historic, as he became the first made Mafia member to publicly acknowledge the existence of the organization, which he referred to as Cosa Nostra. He exposed the structure of the five families, named current bosses like Tommy Lucchese, Carlo Gambino, and Joe Bonanno, and revealed the governing body known as the Commission. The consequences were immediate and far-reaching. Buffalo mob boss Stefano Magaddino reportedly declared that Valachi had to die, and the Federal Bureau of Prisons was forced to house him in a specially built, isolated two-room suite at La Tuna Federal Penitentiary in Texas. Despite living in luxury with couches and a kitchenette, Valachi lived in constant fear and even attempted suicide by hanging at one point. Valachi's story was immortalized in Peter Moss's 1968 book, The Valachi Papers, which was adapted into a 1972 film starring Charles Bronson. While controversial for its accuracy, the book brought the Mafia into mainstream American consciousness and established the template for future mob exposés. Joseph Valachi died of natural causes on April 3, 1971, in his protective custody cell. His betrayal of Vito Genovese didn't directly lead to major prosecutions, but it shattered the Mafia's code of silence forever and paved the way for the informants who would follow. If Joseph Valachi opened the door to Mafia betrayal, then Salvatore "Sammy the Bull" Gravano kicked it wide open. Salvatore "Sammy the Bull" Gravano. Gravano's journey to the top was paved with violence and cunning. He earned the nickname Sammy the Bull for his ferocious fighting style and quickly rose through the ranks of the Gambino family. His loyalty to John Gotti seemed unshakable, especially after he helped orchestrate the 1985 murder of boss Paul Castellano that brought Gotti to power.
Gravano rose through the ranks and became second in command of New York's infamous Gambino crime family.
They tell you to kill someone. Did you think of saying no?
No, not at all.
As underboss, Gravano was Gotti's right-hand man, involved in the family's most sensitive operations. He admitted to involvement in at least 19 murders and was instrumental in the Gambino family's criminal enterprises. Their relationship appeared ironclad, forged in blood and mutual respect, but the seeds of betrayal were planted in the most unlikely place: success itself. The FBI had long been working to bring down the New York Mafia, and their primary target was John Gotti. The FBI and New York State's Organized Crime Task Force set a trap for Gotti, planting bugs in the Ravenite Social Club, the Gambino family's headquarters in Little Italy. The turning point came when Gravano heard the wiretapped conversations.
Listening to the Gotti tapes, it's clear John was setting my father up.
And I realized that John probably eventually would take me out for no other reason.
In October 1991, facing overwhelming evidence and feeling utterly betrayed, Gravano made the unprecedented decision to cooperate with the government. He became the highest-ranking Mafia member in U.S. history to turn informant.
They have said you are the single most important witness ever to testify against the mob.
I think I am. An underboss is the highest position who's ever cooperated.
Gravano's testimony in 1992 was devastating. His detailed accounts of the family's operations, including Gotti's role in the murder of Paul Castellano and numerous other crimes, led to Gotti's conviction on 5 counts of murder, racketeering, extortion, and tax evasion. Gotti was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole and died in prison in 2002. The impact was staggering. Gravano's testimony resulted in 37 convictions. In return for his cooperation, prosecutors offered Gravano a reduced 5-year sentence for his 19 murders, a deal that sparked massive controversy. Family members of his victims felt justice was not served, with one stating that people do more time for a single murder. But Gravano's story didn't end with his testimony. After entering witness protection and leaving the program a year later, he was unable to avoid a life of crime, spending another 17 years in prison after his arrest for drug trafficking. Despite his cooperation, he remained a target, with the Gambino family allegedly ordering hits on him that never materialized. Gravano's betrayal rewrote the rules. If an underboss could flip, no one was untouchable. But not every mobster who walked away from the life did it with courtrooms and wiretaps. Some just disappeared. The next man didn't testify. He simply vanished into a different kind of life. Michael Franzese. What made Franzese extraordinary wasn't just his criminal success, but the scale of it. He masterminded a gasoline tax fraud scheme in the 1980s that reportedly generated $5, $8 million per week at its peak, making him one of the wealthiest mobsters since Al Capone. In 1986, Fortune magazine ranked him as number 18 on its list of the 50 most wealthy and powerful mafia bosses. But success in the mafia comes with a price, and for Franzese, that price became increasingly steep. His relationship with boss Carmine Persico grew strained, particularly after a false newspaper report suggested Franzese was planning to start his own crime family. The article, published in Life magazine without Franzese's knowledge or consent, created suspicions within the family hierarchy.
I don't want any more indictments. And so I do an interview with the guy in prison, and I tell him, look, there is no mob. I married this California girl. I'm, doing my time. I'm going to get out and live my life. Well, a couple of weeks later, the story comes out, and the warden asks me back into the warden's office. He looks at me, he says, Franzese, do you have a death wish? I said, what are you talking about? And he shows me the article. It's a bad article.
The article's headline read, "Quitting the Mafia," and it set off a chain reaction that would define the rest of Franzese's life. Prison officials immediately placed him in lockdown for his own protection, while federal agents pressured him to cooperate fully and enter witness protection. The betrayal cut both ways. When the Colombo family's leadership met to discuss Franzese's fate, his own father went along with the decision to put a contract on his son's life.
Your own father, I guess, spoke against you in one of these meetings or something like that?
Well, he went along with it, from what I was told. He went along with the contract on my life. And
Oh, wait. So everyone knows when it was announced that you're leaving the Mafia, the head of the Colombo family puts out a hit on you, and your dad goes along with it.
Yes, that's what I was told.
Franzese's survival, despite refusing witness protection, remains something of a mystery. Several factors likely contributed: the deaths or imprisonment of key figures who wanted him dead, the mob's strategic restraint to avoid FBI scrutiny, and his complete withdrawal from criminal activity. His survival also suggests that his betrayal, while significant to those in his immediate circle, may not have warranted the resources needed for a prolonged manhunt. Unlike Gravano or Valachi, Franzese didn't break omerta with grand testimony. He broke it by walking away and staying alive. But not every defector sought peace. One in particular made betrayal into a brand and lived to tell the tale from every talk show couch in America. Henry Hill. Born in 1943 in Brownsville, Brooklyn, to an Irish-American father and Sicilian-American mother, Hill was fascinated by the power and glamour of mobsters from an early age. He began running errands for Paul Vario's crew at age 11, eventually dropping out of school to pursue a full-time criminal career. As a non-Italian, Hill could never become a made member of the Mafia, but his charm, hustle, and willingness to take risks made him a valued associate. Hill's relationship with Paul Vario, a respected caporegime in the Lucchese crime family, was complex and ultimately doomed. Vario served as a mentor and father figure, but their relationship was built on mutual benefit rather than genuine loyalty. Hill participated in various crimes, including truck hijackings, arson, extortion, and the infamous 1978 Lufthansa heist at JFK Airport, which netted nearly $6 million. The first crack in their relationship came through Hill's involvement in drug trafficking, which Vario explicitly prohibited. The Mafia in the 1970s viewed narcotics as a risky business that attracted unwanted law enforcement attention. prison. Despite Vario's orders, Hill began dealing drugs, initially marijuana and later cocaine, using connections he made while imprisoned in the early 1970s. The breaking point came in 1980 when Hill was arrested on narcotics charges, facing a lengthy prison sentence as a repeat offender and fearing assassination by his increasingly paranoid crew. Hill made the decision that would define the rest of his life. He became an FBI informant. Hill's cooperation with the FBI was extensive, covering a range of crimes including the Lufthansa heist, Vario's extortion rackets at JFK Airport, and Burke's involvement in the Boston College point-shaving scandal. His testimony led to over 50 convictions, including Vario's imprisonment and Burke's eventual life sentence. By 1987, Hill was expelled from the Witness Protection Program after arrests for narcotics conspiracy and other offenses. Hill capitalized on his notoriety in ways that would have been unthinkable for previous informants. He collaborated with Nicholas Pileggi on Wise Guy, which inspired Goodfellas, appeared on shows like The Howard Stern Show, and published several books about his experiences. His openness about his past, including joking about mob life, contrasted sharply with the fear and secrecy that typically surrounded informants. Henry Hill died of heart failure on June 12, 2012, at age 69, an anticlimactic end for a man who had expected a mob hit for decades. Henry Hill wasn't just a mob rat, he was the mob rat who became a celebrity. But while Hill embraced the spotlight, others carried the weight of their betrayal in silence until one man took it all the way to the top of the Sicilian underworld. Tommaso Buscetta. Born on July 13, 1928 in Palermo, Sicily, Buscetta was the youngest of 17 children in a working-class family. Raised in the impoverished Calza neighborhood, he was drawn to crime early, joining the Sicilian Mafia in 1945 at age 17. Despite never rising above the rank of soldier, his intelligence, charisma, and global network made him one of the most respected figures in Cosa Nostra. Buscetta became a member of the Porta Nuova Mandamento, initially engaging in cigarette smuggling before expanding into drug trafficking. The catalyst for Buscetta's unprecedented betrayal was the Second Mafia War, 1981 to 1983. Riina sought to consolidate power over Cosa Nostra by eliminating rival clans, particularly the Palermo-based families aligned with Buscetta. Buscetta, aligned with the losing Old Guard, watched from Brazil as his world was systematically destroyed. The losses were devastating. His two sons, Benedetto and Antonio, disappeared in September 1982, presumed murdered by the Corleonesi. Over the following years, the murders continued. His brother Vincenzo, son-in-law Giuseppe Genova, brother-in-law Pietro, and 4 nephews all fell victim to Riina's purge. These personal losses, totaling at least 11 family members, shattered Buscetta's loyalty to Cosa Nostra. He later testified that the Corleonese's betrayal of mafia values, killing innocents, including his sons who were not deeply involved, eroded his commitment to Omerta. Buscetta viewed Riina's faction as having corrupted the honorable Cosa Nostra he once served. The final straw came with Buscetta's arrest in Sao Paulo, Brazil, on October 23, 1983, on drug trafficking charges. Extradited to Italy on June 28, 1984, he faced bleak future, life imprisonment or assassination by the Corleonesi. Devastated by his family's murders and disillusioned with the mafia, Buscetta attempted suicide by ingesting barbiturates in custody, but survived. On July 16, 1984, in a Rome criminal poll office, Buscetta began his historic collaboration with anti-mafia judge Giovanni Falcone, warning him, "First, they'll try to kill me, then it'll be your turn." Over 45 days, he provided a detailed expose of Cosa Nostra's inner workings that became known as the Buscetta theorem. The consequences of Buscetta's testimony were staggering. His revelations underpinned the Maxi trial in Palermo, 1986 to 1987, which indicted 475 mafiosi and resulted in 338 convictions, with 2,665 years in prison sentences and 19 life sentences. In the United States, he testified in the Pizza Connection trial, exposing a $1.6 billion heroin trafficking ring linking Sicilian and American mafias, leading to 17 convictions. But the mafia struck back with unprecedented violence. Riina's forces assassinated Judge Falcone in May 1992 and his colleague Paolo Borsellino in July 1992. After Falcone's assassination, Buscetta broke his earlier silence about political connections, testifying before the Anti-Mafia Commission and implicating politicians like former Prime Minister Giulio Andreotti. Buscetta lived his final years under constant protection in the United States, dying of cancer in 2000 under an assumed name in Florida. Buscetta didn't just betray men, he betrayed a culture. His words brought down a criminal empire on 2 continents, but as his enemies fell, others rose. One of them would flip without ever being caught, a boss who saw the writing on the wall and turned first. Alphonse Little Al D'Arco. D'Arco's criminal career was extensive and violent. He was involved in 10 murders, including that of Bruno Facciola, and engaged in bookmaking, loan sharking, drug deals, extortion, and numerous other crimes. In January 1991, when bosses Amuso and Casso went into hiding to avoid federal indictment, they appointed D'Arco as acting boss, thrusting him into leadership during one of the most turbulent periods in Mafia history. What made D'Arco's eventual betrayal so significant was that he was not facing immediate prosecution when he decided to cooperate. His defection was purely about survival. The catalyst came from the increasingly erratic and paranoid behavior of his bosses, who were issuing death sentences from hiding with reckless abandon. The breaking point was Amuso and Casso's failed assassination attempt on Lucchese capo pater Fat Pete Chiodo in early 1991. Amuso falsely believed Chiodo had become a government witness and ordered D'Arco to arrange his murder. When the hit failed and Chiodo survived 12 bullet wounds, he actually did become a government witness, and Amuso and Casso blamed D'Arco for the botched attempt. The final straw came on September 18, 1991, during a meeting at the Kimberly Hotel in Manhattan. D'Arco noticed that soldier Mike DeSantis was wearing a bulletproof vest and had a gun hidden under his shirt. When DeSantis returned from the bathroom without the weapon, D'Arco recognized this as a classic setup. The next person entering the bathroom would retrieve the gun to kill him. His driver's unexplained absence further confirmed his suspicions, and D'Arco fled the hotel. The next day, September 19th, FBI agents confirmed D'Arco's fears by warning him that he was indeed targeted for assassination. D'Arco's defection was unprecedented. He became the highest-ranking member of a crime family to turn government witness at the time. The impact of D'Arco's testimony was devastating for the Lucchese family and organized crime as a whole. He testified in over a dozen trials and numerous grand jury hearings, leading to the conviction of more than 50 mobsters. Most significantly, his testimony led to life sentences for both Vittorio Amuso and Anthony Casso, the very bosses who had marked him for death. D'Arco also provided crucial testimony against Vincent the Chin Gigante of the Genovese family, Victor Little Vic Orina of the Colombo family, and Anthony Sparrow of the Bonanno family. Perhaps most notably, his information helped convict Stephen Caracappa and Louis Ippolito, the Mafia cops who were NYPD detectives working for the Lucchese family. In November 2002, D'Arco was sentenced to time served and fined $50, reflecting the immense value of his cooperation. He entered the Federal Witness Protection Program and lived in obscurity until his death in 2019 from kidney disease complications. D'Arco's quiet betrayal was a masterclass in survival, a man who jumped before he was pushed. But the next traitor didn't just save himself, he tore down his own family with him, becoming the first boss in Mafia history to wear a wire. Joseph Massino. After Rastelli's death in 1991, Massino assumed leadership of the Bonanno family while imprisoned for labor racketeering. Upon his release in 1992, he rebuilt the family with remarkable success, earning the title The Last Don as other New York bosses faced convictions. His leadership was characterized by extreme paranoia and caution. He forbade his name from being spoken, closed social clubs, and held meetings in remote locations to avoid FBI surveillance. But Massino's downfall began with betrayals within his own inner circle, particularly by his underboss and brother-in-law, Salvatore "Good-Looking Sal" Vitale. Vitale had been a trusted confidant who played a key role in the 1981 triple murder, but by the late 1990s their relationship had deteriorated. Massino demoted Vitale and began plotting to kill him, suspecting he might cooperate with authorities. In 2003, both Massino and Vitale were arrested on racketeering charges. Vitale, facing significant prison time, turned informant almost immediately, providing devastating testimony against Massino at his 2004 trial. Vitale's cooperation exposed details of Massino's crimes, including 6 mob murders, and was a critical blow to his defense. In July 2004, Massino was convicted based largely on testimony from Vitale and other cooperators. But what happened next was unprecedented in Mafia history. Minutes after his conviction, Massino approached Judge Nicholas Garaufis to express his willingness to cooperate, shocking the underworld and his own family. Massino's cooperation was devastating to the Bonanno family and organized crime as a whole. He wore a wire in prison to record conversations with Vincent Basciano, his former acting boss, implicating him in the murder of Randolph Pizzolo. In 2011, Massino testified against Basciano, stating, "He told me that he had him killed," referring to Basciano's order to kill Pizzolo. This testimony led to Basciano's conviction and 2 life sentences. Massino also provided the FBI with information that led to the recovery of the bodies of the 3 captains killed in 1981, further dismantling the Bonanno family's legacy. His cooperation was described described as almost certainly causing numerous other members of organized crime to cooperate with the government, accelerating the decline of the family. The personal cost was enormous. Massino's wife, Josephine, was reportedly devastated by his decision to testify, and there were rumors she considered divorce, though they remained married. Within the underworld, Massino was seen as another rat that did not go down honorably and disappointed even his close family when he decided to spill the beans. In July 2013, Judge Nicholas Garofis commuted Massino's 2 life sentences, citing his cooperation. He was released after 10.5 years in prison under supervised release for life. By 2013, the Bonanno family was described as a shell of its former self due to defections, including Massino's. Massino lived quietly in Ohio until shortly before his death on September 14, 2023, at age 80, due to chronic health issues. Massino's cooperation shattered what little mystique the Mafia had left. But before the code of silence truly crumbled, there was one man whose original betrayal set it all in motion. Twice, his name is etched in Mafia history as the father of modern organized crime. Charles Lucky Luciano. The Castellamarese War, 1930 to 1931, provided Luciano with the perfect opportunity to reshape organized crime according to his vision. This brutal conflict pitted Masseria against Salvatore Maranzano, with each seeking to become the undisputed boss of all bosses. Luciano, recognizing that Masseria's traditionalist leadership was outdated and limiting, secretly allied with rival boss Salvatore Maranzano. The first betrayal came on April 15, 1931, in a Coney Island restaurant called Nuova Villa Tamaro. Luciano arranged Masseria's murder, luring his boss to lunch and then excusing himself to the bathroom while gunmen entered and shot Masseria to death. The symbolic nature of this betrayal cannot be overstated. Masseria trusted Luciano completely, never suspecting that his most valued lieutenant was orchestrating his assassination. But Luciano's ambitions didn't end with Masseria's death. Having helped Maranzano consolidate power, he quickly realized that his new boss had no intention of sharing authority. Maranzano declared himself capo di tutti I capi, boss of all bosses, and began restructuring the families according to his vision. However, Luciano understood that Maranzano's old-world thinking and dictatorial style would ultimately prove just as limiting as Masseria's had been. Within months of Masseria's death, Luciano began planning his second betrayal. On September 10, 1931, he orchestrated Maranzano's assassination in his Manhattan office. The hit was carried out by gunmen posing as federal agents, and Maranzano was stabbed and shot to death. In a single day, Luciano eliminated not just Maranzano, but also several of his key allies across the country in what became known as the Night of the Sicilian Vespers. Luciano's betrayals ended the Castellamarese War and modernized the Mafia, establishing principles of organization and cooperation that governed American organized crime for generations. The 5 families system he created, Luciano, later Genovese, Mangano, later Gambino, Profaci, later Colombo, Bonanno, and Gagliano, later Lucchese, became the template for organized crime families across America. However, Luciano's innovations came at a price. He was later convicted of prostitution racketeering in 1936 and sentenced to 30 to 50 years in prison. Ironically, his sentence was commuted in 1946 for his cooperation with the U.S. Navy during World War II, when he helped secure the waterfront against sabotage. He was deported to Italy, where he continued to influence American organized crime until his death in 1962. Luciano's betrayals weren't confessions, they were calculated chess moves that redesigned organized crime forever. But not all betrayals were born of ambition. One of the darkest came from a killer who served 2 masters, his boss and the FBI, and left a bloody trail for both. Frank Tieri. In the late 1970s, Atlantic City legalized casino gambling, creating a lucrative opportunity for organized crime. The territory was controlled by Angelo Bruno's Philadelphia family, but Bruno, known as the Gentle Don for his preference for diplomacy, was reluctant to allow New York's 5 families to operate there. This stance created tension with New York mobsters, including Tieri, who saw Atlantic City as a potential gold mine. Tieri played a pivotal role in orchestrating Bruno's murder through an elaborate deception. He sent a message to Antonio Tony Bananas Caponegro, Bruno's consigliere, falsely assuring him that the Mafia Commission would support him as the new boss of the Philadelphia family if he assassinated Bruno. Believing he had the Commission's backing, Caponegro arranged for Bruno's murder on March 21, 1980, when Bruno was shot in his car in Philadelphia. The deception was complete and deadly. Unbeknownst to Caponegro, the Commission had not sanctioned Bruno's murder, and Tieri's promise was a deliberate lie. After Bruno's death, the Commission summoned Caponegro to New York for what he believed would be a meeting to confirm his new position. Instead, on April 18, 1980, Caponegro's body was found in the Bronx, tortured and beaten, with $20 bills stuffed in his orifices as a symbolic warning against unsanctioned hits. The outcome achieved exactly what Tieri had planned. Following Bruno's death and Caponegro's execution, the Genovese family gained significant influence in Atlantic City's gambling operations, securing the access to casino profits that Bruno had previously denied them. This Machiavellian strategy eliminated two obstacles: Bruno, who controlled the territory, and Caponegro, a potential rival, while positioning the Genovese family for massive profits. Tieri was eventually convicted in 1980 on federal racketeering charges, becoming the first mobster convicted under RICO statutes. However, he maintained his silence and never cooperated with law enforcement, adhering to omerta until his death from natural causes in 1981 before serving his sentence. Tieri's deception was cunning, calculated, and final. He eliminated two rivals with a lie and walked away without a word. But the next betrayal wasn't silent. It was systemic. A killer who fed the FBI for decades, all while working hits for the mob. Gregory, the Grim Reaper Scarpa, the killer who served two masters. Born on May 8, 1928 in Brooklyn, Scarpa grew up in Bensonhurst and was introduced to the Colombo crime family in the 1950s. He quickly rose through the ranks due to his ruthlessness, earning nicknames like the Grim Reaper and the Mad Hatter for his violent tendencies. Scarpa was involved in illegal gambling, loan sharking, extortion, hijacking, and murder, reportedly killing over 50 people and sometimes leaving the number 666 inches on victims' pagers. What made Scarpa unique was that starting in the early 1960s, he became an FBI informant, a relationship that lasted nearly 30 years. His cooperation began after an arrest for armed robbery in 1962, when he agreed to provide information to avoid a lengthy prison sentence. But unlike other informants, Scarpa continued his criminal activities with apparent FBI protection, creating one of the most controversial relationships in law enforcement history. Scarpa was a protege of Carmine the Snake Persico, who became the boss of the Colombo family. Their relationship was built on mutual respect and shared history, with Scarpa serving as Persico's chief enforcer and hitman during the 1970s and 1980s. By the late 1980s, Persico was imprisoned but remained the family's boss, with Scarpa continuing as one of his most trusted operators. Scarpa's betrayal was particularly insidious because it was hidden in plain sight. As an FBI informant, he provided detailed intelligence on the Colombo family's operations, including murders, rackets, hierarchy changes, and internal disputes. FBI reports from 1980 to 1993, documented by his handler R. Lindley DeVecchio, revealed that Scarpa betrayed Persico by sharing sensitive information about the family's activities. The relationship was reciprocal and corrupt. Scarpa's handler, FBI agent Lindley DeVecchio, allegedly provided Scarpa with information about rivals and pending arrests. This included a 1987 tip about his son Gregory Scarpa Jr.'s impending arrest on narcotics and murder charges. Scarpa reportedly gave DeVecchio cash, jewelry, and stolen goods in exchange for protection and intelligence. The Third Colombo War, 1991 to 1993, showcased the full extent of Scarpa's duplicity. The war erupted when Victor Orena attempted to seize permanent control of the family, opposing Persico's desire to install his son, Alphonse, as boss. Scarpa led Persico's armed faction, actively hunting Orena loyalists. On November 18, 1991, Orena's hitmen targeted Scarpa, ambushing his car in Brooklyn. Scarpa escaped with his daughter and grandson unharmed, but the incident fueled his aggression against Orena's faction. What Persico didn't know was that while Scarpa was fighting his war, he was simultaneously feeding the FBI detailed information about the conflict's progress, including Persico's strategies and the activities of his loyalists. That brings us to the end of this video. For more interesting videos like this, click on the cards on your screen.